For us, every day is a new opportunity to make sure our first impressions are always our best and to see possibilities on the horizon, to make our facilities and services more accessible and find freedom all around us. With a location proximity to active markets, with a liberal air transportation policy, that daily pursuit is how we turn everyday opportunities for you. For all destination marketing support, customized packages for new existing airlines and operators, and for a highly ranked tourist destination, the Gambia Civil Aviation Authority is here to serve. We regulate air transport, operate and manage BIA technical requirements merged with commercial considerations. We have experienced and well-trained aviation professionals to cater for your needs. For investment opportunities in building airport hotels, shopping malls, playground for children, do contact us on 4472-831, 4472-893. Gambia Civil Aviation Authority. We go beyond daily.
Stewart & Co. Solicitors, a legal excellence firm in London that can help you with all aspects of your legal work. If you are looking at immigrating to the United Kingdom, Stewart & Co. can help you to set up business, buy houses in the UK, and will deal with all your legal works from start to finish.
For all your general immigration work, we can help you with that as well. If you're applying for any form of visa, whether student visas, settlement visas, marriage visas, or a child wanting to come to the United Kingdom to settle with the family, we can help you to achieve your goals.
Stewart & Co. Solicitors, a legal excellence firm specializing in conveyancing, immigration, litigation, family law, personal injury, licensing, no win, no fee. Contact us today at www.sk-solicitors.com.
And do small or big projects with the same dedication and commitment as we do. With a reputation as the leading printing company in the country, when it comes to major projects and innovative solutions, we always deliver in high quality, thus receiving the trust and confidence of our clients. From the moment your order is placed to when it is delivered, we believe in exceeding expectations from the sales manager to the production team, the account manager, and the person delivering your material. We have state-of-the-art equipment and a highly experienced and competent workforce that enables us to deliver top-quality work on time. At reasonable prices, we provide our clients with multiple solutions right from conceptualizing, designing, printing, binding, publishing, and distribution. For all your printing requirements, we are strategically located at the Sankumsila Highway, the Gambia Printing and Publishing Corporation. We print what you desire.
When we touch down, better broke down.
With Gamtel G-Fiber, now you can enjoy super fast internet in gigabytes. G-Fiber is affordable, stable, secured, and accessible to homes, businesses, and enterprises. With Gamtel G-Fiber, the future is speed. Gamtel, creating a brighter future in communication.
That's how she became mine and see the
Hello and welcome to another edition of Kerr Fatou, and of course tonight Oli is on vacation, so I have the pleasure of having my Kianka girl here, Nyuma Sata, to co-host with me. Nyuma, welcome to Kerr Fatou.
Thank you for inviting me.
And of course with us tonight we are going to have Dr. Ousman Gajigo. He's an economist. He has worked with the African Development Bank, the UN, and of course Columbia University. He holds a PhD in development economics, and he's currently a consultant Doctor, welcome to Kerr Fatou.
Thank you.
Actually, we had so many people said, what are you waiting on having Doctor on Kerr Fatou? So it's definitely a great pleasure having you on the show.
Coming up on Kerr Fatou.
If you look at our government budget each year, there is always glaring misallocations. The problem is with our expenditures.
In communication, connectivity is everything. We ensure that the links never sleep. Quantities and qualities, all in our data service, providing efficient, reliable voice and data service. We believe if you're not up to speed, then you're going backwards. Communications have to flow as fast as the speed of light. Whatever business you're in, having someone who understands your needs is critical. That is why we just don't offer you technology, we offer you solutions. Enjoy Gamcel's internet broadband anytime, anywhere. Your national operator, Gamcel, Yaibaram.
Nima, today we're going to talk about a wide range of issues. We're going to talk about the economy. We have seen a few things happening which a lot of Gambians have raised concerns about. Notably, recently the finance minister tabled the $94 million loan from Saudi at the assembly. We have seen also the oil deal. The government just signed with BP. What is the interest, the general interest of the country? All of these things we will discuss with Dr. Gajigo. So today, this is what we're going to have on the show.
All right. It's going to be interesting. We have had Dr. Gajigo on our show twice, and it was very interesting. Economics is his field.
Yeah.
And like you said, there have been speculations on Facebook and social media everywhere. People are concerned. And the government is not always forthcoming with information that people need to know about. So it's important to have people like Dr. Gajigo to throw light on some of these things, what the implications of these deals are going to be. If we're going to start with the loan thing, it's been almost a year, or less than a few months, when the OIC summit that was going to be held here was cancelled. It's not up to a year, sorry. We expected, like any other country, Senegal or other African countries that have hosted the OIC, that we are going to be benefiting from the summit. When it failed, we thought maybe the preparations were not done properly or the funding wasn't there. Now, if you're expecting, for example, a renewal of the summit to be brought back to the Gambia, we're expecting that the benefits are going to be higher. We don't expect that we're going to be giving loans that are going to take generations to pay off.
Yeah.
So what is your take on this being tabled at the National Assembly, especially, as I understand it, it has been tabled after it was being signed?
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, that's going to be interesting. So let's look at first the economy in general. It's been almost 3 years into Borough government. What is the status of our economy right now?
It's doing okay, but it's not, I think we've discussed this before, it's not doing, I mean, it's nothing to write home about. It's definitely nothing to pat yourself on the back as they have been doing. And I've seen the speeches that they made at the rallies. This is the reality. In the last few years of the Jammeh regime, foreign direct investment was going down. You know, we were probably the only country in Africa at a similar level of income where FDI was going down. Why? Because Jammeh's government was truly bad. You know, the track record in terms of, you know, Jammeh has been expropriating investors. So if you are a serious foreign investor, Gambia wasn't, I mean, as a small country, we are not an attractive market, even under the best of circumstances. You add to that a dictatorial regime and a dictator that was expropriating the assets of investors, and he did it for several investors. Some of them have taken us, at least 2 or 3, have taken us to arbitration. So we had an investment climate that was very bad. So foreign direct investment was going down. Most importantly also, we are a country that is highly dependent on aid. So in terms of aid from bilateral donors, I mean, EU had cut off funding completely. So our program with IMF had been stopped. And when you have no program with IMF and you are a fragile country like the Gambia with a very terrible investment climate, that has, that just basically just makes the problem even worse. So you had very limited FDI. Our budget, which was highly dependent on budget support, was very low because EU had completely stopped everything. So the economy was really just on the nosedive. Things were going bad. Now, in a situation like that, if a new government comes to power that is believed to be democracy, and there's a belief that this country, there's a new dawn in the country, all of a sudden EU has released all of the funds that they had withheld. So ADB and World Bank came up with budget support. Now investors, maybe not foreign investors, but like Gambians who were afraid to come back are all of a sudden are coming back and starting investment. So even if you had put a monkey at the State House who is just sitting there at the president's office, the economy would write itself off. Yeah. So it's sort of like, think of it as an airplane. A modern airplane is designed to be in the air to fly. Unless you actively try to crash it, it will keep on flying. So the economy is sort of like that. It's not one individual sitting at the State House or Minister of Finance just, putting it up, putting it down. It's a combination. What we see as an economy is just the effect of different sectors, individuals starting businesses, people's confidence leading them to invest, investors coming in, foreign investors, our development partners releasing funds. So the point I'm trying to make basically is that the economy right now is sort of like we still are not where we should have been if things have been going well. So Barrow and his government shouldn't be going around patting themselves on the back as if what we are observing today is just some outcome of some policies they've implemented, because they have not really implemented any policies.
But they created the environment for us to have a stable economy, because of course, like
I will correct that. I wouldn't say Barrow created the environment. That's sort of like saying Barrow came and gave us democracy. Barrow is the product of democracy that the Gambian people did. Barrow himself is a product of the new environment. Barrow didn't create that. He's a product of it.
Oh, Barrow didn't create that.
My point is, the scenario that you have just painted here, if you have to put it in a layman's language, it will be as having a motionless body that somebody injects a life into, and all of a sudden they are standing up. Right. But how long do you sustain that life is the question. Now, when we speak about the economy, this is what we are speaking about. How long is it going to be for this government to do something to sustain the growth that has been injected, that has been stimulated as a result of a change of regime? And this requires active participation into the economy. And I think that's why it's important that we are looking at investment, especially in the productive sectors. It is the reason why we are making sure that we cope inflation. It's the reason why we are making sure that those people who are participating in the economy, they're not strangled. For example, the women in the gardens, the women in the markets, the women working in the fisheries sectors. So there are activities happening around those areas with agriculture, with activities of the Chinese involvement in the tourism development areas, with the women and their activities in the gardens and all of that. If you're going to project in the near future, putting into perspective all of these things that are happening, how is our economy going to strive or otherwise?
I like the way, because this really, you have to look at our, as you did, look at our most important sectors. What are the policies and what are the investments we are doing now? Because those are going to be the main determinants of how the economy will evolve over time. Yeah. Take agriculture, for instance. If you look at our economy from independence to now, the biggest determinant, almost exclusively the only determinant of agriculture in the Gambia is the level of rainfall. If you look at our GDP, not only agriculture, since our biggest component of our GDP is agriculture, if you look at the growth rate of GDP over time, and I've shared this graph, I wish I had it right now. I've shared this graph in many settings before, and you compare that with rainfall levels. When we have a huge drought any year, no matter how great the policies are, no matter how great the tourist season is, we'll have a fall in GDP. when you combine, when you take tourism in a given year where there's a big drop in tourism, like the Ebola crisis, when it caused a drop in tourism, there's also a fall in GDP. So the two main factors that determine our economy in Gambia, unfortunately, are tourist visits and rainfall level. Now, if you are a government, the key is what can we do to lessen our economy's dependence on these two factors. Agriculture is seasonal, tourism is seasonal. Right now, these are
and they are all dependent on factors that are beyond our control.
Completely beyond our control. But that doesn't have to be the case. There's nothing inevitable about that. You can change that. In agriculture, what do you, I mean, why are we dependent on rainfall? It's because there is no irrigation technology. You know, this is not, by the way, a problem of Barrow regime. We started basically with Java. So we have the natural resource here, a river Gambia that is mostly fresh water. You can have canal system like other countries have done to make sure that farmers or any other agricultural producers have access to water, so that you'll still depend on rainfall, but not completely. So if there is a drought, the effect on your on your economy would be a bit more moderate. You can also have a much more long-term policy and reforms in the tourism sector to make sure that the tourism sector is, there's a bit more services and diversification, so that you are not dependent on only the sun seekers, people coming for the sun in the winter. You look towards what you can do during the off-season. Again, this problem is not something that has started with Barrow, but this has been a long-term problem. But one of the things we had hoped was that in this new government, there would be some sort of a shift, new reforms in this transition period. But what we are seeing is that in any sector you look at, there will be, basically the government is just doing a continuation of what has been done. They are not doing anything different. So if you mention other things like other sectors that are important for us, that every country needs to grow, like infrastructure. So sure, we have some projects ongoing, but if some things like roads and energy, we still are very far from where we need to be in terms of investments. One of the major deals the government tried to sign was with a company in Turkey that turned out to be a huge debacle. It turns out that if we had signed that agreement, we would bankrupt ourselves, because the representative of our government wasn't competent to do the negotiation. It was a one-man team. And everybody knows in this sort of large-scale concession agreement, you need a team, and a team backed by a very strong legal team. Normally, even if you are a big country or an institution like the World Bank or ADB, you would get the advice of an outside legal team. But our government is just going about this the wrong way. So when you look at it in terms of investments that are being done in the specific sectors, where there is fisheries, where there is agriculture, where there is reforms that are needed, where there is new policies or visions for agriculture, you just don't, I am just not seeing anything that will give me confidence that in a few years we can say, okay, we'll be taking off thanks to these investments and reforms that have been done.
So how sustainable is this way of doing business? How sustainable? Like you just mentioned that the government is just doing a continuity of what was happening. Yes, the economy is stable. Let's call it stable. I don't know whether it's stable or what.
Well,
I don't know how to call it.
It's stable at a low level.
Yeah, but the major concern is the ordinary Gambian is not feeling it.
Yeah.
Because with
prices are not going down.
Prices are not going down. We are not seeing any improvement in our basic lives.
Lives are not changing.
Yeah.
Nothing new is happening.
And then this is, you just mentioned, it's a continuity. How sustainable is that? How will that grow the economy?
Yeah. But basically, the answer is it's not going to put us on a growth path that is sustainable. So, in other words, if you see any bump in GDP, it's not going to be sustainable. If one of the things that's very, every few years the IMF writes a report called the Article 4, where they talk a lot about their programs, but they look very clearly at the economy. And what is interesting in Gambia's report is there was one section that says if the Gambian economy didn't have any droughts, over the past, let's say the past couple of decades, our average growth in GDP would have been somewhere above 6%. Now that is very, very significant, because between independence and now, our average growth rate of our economy is less than 1%. This is why the standard of living between us now and the people who lived at independence, of course there's been an improvement, but not much, because our economy essentially hasn't grown much. So when you have an economy like, as we have had over the past couple of decades, where your growth is completely determined by factors like rainfall and tourism arrival, it means this year, I mean, just because last year we didn't have a drought, economy was is 3%, and these people are jumping with joy. It means this year, if we happen to have a drought, all the gains we made last year will be wiped out. It means next year, for instance, if there's a depression or a recession in Europe, and that affects their income and tourism arrivals decline, our GDP will go down. In other words, whatever growth we've experienced over the past year or the past 2 years is not sustainable if the status quo remains the same.
Wow. Okay. So the question I have though is, I mean, we grew up hearing about the agriculture being the backbone of the Gambian economy. And I am from the rural areas. I know that productivity in those areas is not the same as it used to be. And my worry is that in the near future, people are going to be more dependent on their families from who are working in the government or who are abroad sending them money. And that doesn't tell well for the economy, neither for the personal development of the individuals who are forced to be unproductive in that way. My question, though, is now, based on your observation, who are the main actors in the Gambian economy, if not those in the agricultural sector or elsewhere? Yeah,
unfortunately, I mean, your question basically answers itself, because you phrased it very well, and and the answer is right there. The interesting thing is agriculture. I mean, to see where our agricultural sector is doing well is to look at the yield of the various crops. The main crops that we have here: groundnut, rice, millet, and sorghum. You can look at these yields over time. They have not been growing. Not only have they not been growing, but if you compare it to other countries, the yields, the rice yields in those countries are significantly higher than us, because they have been growing over time. Compare our rice yield with that of Senegal or with that of Mali. If anyone wants to excuse by saying, oh, they have irrigation, well, we have the same resources they have. It's a river, basically, that all have the same source. So what has tended to happen over the past couple of years, if you look at the average, the budget of the average household in the Gambia is about a quarter of their expenditure is actually coming from remittances. Yeah. So in other words, thanks to just some relatives being outside, some people are actually able to feed themselves. And one way, you don't even have to look at that statistics to get an idea. How many Western Union signs you pass by every day? And most of them, you go to Western Union, the ones in the Gambia, you can't send money. Maybe like 1 or 2 in the country. Yeah. You only receive. Only receive. So this is really not, this is going to be a problem, because the population is growing. Not only is the population growing, but the urbanization rate is growing. In West Africa, we actually have the highest share of urban population. We are around 60% now of the population living in urban areas. So sometimes people move from rural areas to urban areas because they see opportunities. Maybe they've earned enough in agriculture, they want to open a shop. That's fine. But the other kind of migration, where it is basically things are really so tough in the rural areas, agricultural productivity is low, your earning is low, you are like, well, I cannot survive in the village, let me try my luck in the urban areas. That kind of...
We are all here because of that.
Basically, you see just... traditionally, we used to have poverty concentrated in rural areas. Now, what you will see with this sort of pattern is that it's going to be concentrated in the urban areas. And that one could be a recipe for all sorts of problems. Now, somebody who's hungry and is in a remote area, if he's frustrated, may just lie under a tree. A young person who is frustrated and not too far from turntable, if he sees some people protesting about something else, he's likely to join them and just throw rocks at somebody's business just because for him it's not about a specific issue.
Yeah.
But that just provided an outlet for general frustration, lack of opportunities.
I'm sure we are going to come back to the economy, but it's important that you raise this point. The recent protests that happened in Brikama and in Serekunda, would you say that is related to the analogy you are making here right now?
It's part of it. And not only that, we all know we have diaspora outside. Some of them have gone for, they've been outside for decades, and some of them have good jobs. But recently, over the past couple of years, especially in the latter years of the Jammeh regime, we have had a lot of young people leaving because most of them just don't see hope here. Just to give you an idea, between 2008 and 2016, basically about 80,000 young Gambians between the age of 19 and 30 went to the back. This is basically minimum. Because I got this number from Eurostat. This is the European database where they record the number of people who made first-time asylum applications. So this, this number...
This does not include those who remain in Libya, for
example. Exactly, or those who went and didn't file asylum. Because there are some people who are in Italy who didn't file asylum because they are trying to, go through, clandestine way to go through Germany. Yes. So if we are all of those people, we're looking at somewhere close to 100,000. This is from a population of 2 million. Wow. And we're talking about youth from the age of 19 to 30. And also remember that now Germany and other countries have started deporting a lot of these people. Because many of them, when they went there, what was their reason for asylum? Was because of the Jammeh regime. Now the Jammeh regime is no more. Now a lot of them will be sent back. So you have this situation where we don't have an economy. I mean, we cannot be confident that this government is going to put us on a sustainable economic growth path because they are not doing anything new. They are just doing what has been done before. You add to that a growing population of youth and other people coming back frustrated. So one shouldn't be surprised if some legitimate protest starts, other youth just join in because they're like, we are frustrated and this is one way of venting out their steam.
So for a country that largely depends on grants and loans, for example, a typical example, end of the 2018, when the finance, because they did not have all the budgetary support from our partners, they had to go and look for supplementary from the assembly. For a country that largely depends on grants and loans, how are we able to even grow our economy? What other ways are there to help grow our economy without depending largely on these grants and loans?
There are many ways actually, because the thing to do is, first of all, you have to, like as you say, you have to realize what your limitations are. You are not an oil-rich country with all revenues coming in or other commodities that's bringing just a rainfall of money. So what you do is, cognizant of the fact that you have limited resources, it means you have to look at your expenditures. If you are, sometimes this analogy doesn't always work, but it helps to think of it that way. If you are a household, you are the breadwinner of your family, your salary is $5,000 a month, and you decide that, maybe 3 times a week you're going to take your family to a restaurant at Senegambia. Is that a very...
It's not sustainable.
No, it's not sustainable.
No.
So the point I'm trying to drive at is that if you look at our government budget each year, there is always glaring misallocations. The problem is with our expenditures. Many African countries, including those that are doing well, are dependent on grants and aid from other countries. So we are not an exception. But you can make your problem worse by having, by not, prioritizing your expenditures. And we have a lot of problem in the government with that. Number one, look, we have a military that takes over $800 million per annum. 800 million? Yes. The number of military personnel, is the military personnel under the Jawara regime, our army was less than 1,000. But under Jammeh, our military total is around 7,000 plus. And this new government, 3 years in power, they have not done anything about that. Our military budget is just increasing, and we have the same military budget now as we had under Jammeh. That makes no sense. Our military is not something we need. I would actually advocate for completely scrapping our military, but I'm okay with reducing it.
Would you, with today's challenges of, you know,
that's a big
deal.
Be
maybe it's extreme, but the point I'm making is, even if you don't scrap it, there's a way of making it small. Let me give an idea. Do you know the military's budget is more than the Ministry of Interior's budget, is more than the Ministry of Industry and Trade budget combined?
Wow.
The other area, that's not the other area I'm talking about, but another area that I would like to point to is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It's a lot of waste. Our budget for Ministry of Foreign Affairs is over $1 billion per annum. You know why it's that high?
The different embassies we have across the world?
We have too many embassies in the world, which we don't, more than half of them we don't need.
The government will say we're trying to rebuild our image. For 22 years, the Gambia government has, the Gambia's image is being, I don't know how you call it. So they are trying to...
if you consider the level of diplomacy at State House itself, I think that should cover for the numerous embassies that have been established across the globe. But I understand your point about the military, though, because one thing we need to look back as to why the military has expanded this much. One of the reasons why the military has expanded was because Jammeh used it to sustain his system of patronage. The Green Youth people were being put there, family members, tribemen were being put into the military to build it to a capacity that we do not necessarily need. Every country needs a defense mechanism, but certain things need to be prioritized. We are not, I mean, it's always good, prudent to look into the future, but our current priority is not to have a huge military, and I agree with that.
And to look at the fact that we are surrounded by a friendly neighbor. It's one thing if you are surrounded by hostile neighbors. You say, okay, maybe I need to have a military posture that is very strong, you have a strong defense. I have nothing against that. You know, you don't even have to go to the extreme of closing. Maybe I don't think that's extreme, but make it a bit much smaller. If you can bring the military budget to something that is more reasonable for the country, what you will save alone. For instance, do you know the average cost of a road, if you're building a road, in Africa, these studies have been done. Normally, the longer the road, you know, because of economies of scale, the lower the cost per distance covered. But suppose you're trying to build something that's over 100 kilometers. The average cost per lane of per kilometer is somewhere around $200,000. $200,000 exactly. So if you take about just half of our military budget per annum, do you know how many roads you can build in Serekunda alone? A lot. Take also the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Their budget is even higher than the Ministry of Defense. But it's also high. It's almost the same as the budget we spend on agriculture, more than what we spend on higher education, more than what we spend on health, more than what we spend on
Foreign affairs is more than health.
Yes.
And education.
Education now, obviously, they split. You have Ministry of Basic Education and Higher Education. That's a different problem, by the way. I'll come to that in a second. So, foreign affairs, you can cut our embassies by more than half. You know, the problem is not only the large number of embassies, it's also we have a lot of staff. They are overstaffed. For instance, do you know now that this started in the Jammeh regime, and unfortunately, Barrow regime is continuing it. In most of our embassies, we have the NIA staff there and military attaches. Now they call them SIS. What are they doing there? Before, Jammeh used to have this SIS or NIA in every bureau to spy on people, so that he would know whichever government officials are not like fully supportive of him. What intelligence work are our SIS staff really doing? It's something I can understand. A bigger country with other priorities, with global ambitions like US or other major countries having those kind of practices. But for a small poor country with much more manageable and focused problem, why are we spending that amount of money to put other staff who are non-essential? Just to give an idea how expensive this staff is. The American school in the Gambia per annum, per kid, is $9,000 US. It is the cheapest in West Africa. In Ivory Coast or in Senegal, the average cost of the American school is somewhere around $25,000 US per year per child. When a Gambian embassy is set up in those countries, all those families go to those American schools. So Gambian families that are working for the Gambian embassy in Dakar, they go to the American school.
Who pays for that? The government
The
pays.
government, 100%.
Whoa.
3 children of every staff member.
The ADB pays 80% of the cost of American school. Our government pays 100%. So in addition to these salaries, this cost, if you have a family with 4 kids, they are going to American school, the Gambia government pays for it. That's why the budget for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is so high. It makes no sense whatsoever.
Wow.
So these are some of the, and this has been known for a while. IMF and others have advised the government, you do not need all of these embassies. Cut them down. Why do you need an embassy in Venezuela, in Cuba? Why do you need several embassies in Western Europe? One embassy in Brussels can cover all of them. Why do you need a US embassy and a UN missions?
Yeah.
The accelerated train between New York and Washington DC is 2 hours.
It's 2 hours.
Have one mission that covers both. But
even Canada, why
yes.
Canada can be covered by America?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Why have an embassy in UK, one in Belgium, one in France? I mean, an embassy in Russia. Why do we need one? And then we have not only an embassy in China, but we have military attaches there. Why do we even have a single military attache? So when you go beyond that waste of money in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, then you go to the Ministry of Education. Instead of having a single Ministry of Education, Jammeh's government decided to split it to have a Ministry of Higher Education and a Ministry of Basic Education. The problem with that is it creates duplication of posts. You know, now you have a separate minister who needs separate cars, who needs a separate permanent secretaries, separate directories, separate, you know, everything is multiplied for completely unnecessary reason. And now that a Ministry of Higher Education is set up, they need to keep themselves busy. Unfortunately, what they've kept themselves busy with is not really the things that should be priority. We have the University of Gambia, great. Let's improve it. You know, but we haven't improved that with all the problems, with all the resource shortage. You want to create another university at GTTI. I lectured at the University of, you know the University of Gambia more than I do, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I lectured there one semester. So actually, the exam for my public finance class, I had to print it. The notes that they need to, you know, for the class, you know, the books that they needed, they couldn't find it. When I couldn't find the book, I had to write the notes and use my own money to print out the notes for them. There are a lot of other examples.
Now, at the University of the Gambia, if you're going to sit here and narrate the problems that exist there, it's going to take us a whole day and beyond. So you have a university, a main one, a flagship one. Why don't you try to meet some of the basic needs of a university instead of going to opening another one? You know, so it's as if the idea for them is let's prioritize quantity over quality. At the end of the day, you want people when they finish university to be highly trained. What's going to be the case if you have a university, half of the youth have university degree when they can't even read? So this is the basic problem I want to say is it is true that we are dependent on aid and grant, but that's not specific to Gambia alone.
Yeah,
you can still do a lot of things in your country. You can still have a lot of investments if you prioritize the right investments in the country and have development. If you cut the budget of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs by 75%, the military by half, what you can spend on just roads and energy is substantial. Within a 5-year period, the road deficit in the Greater Banjul area will be wiped out. Wow. Just knowing the number I quoted, the 200,000 per kilometer per lane. Now take about $1 billion, multiply that 5 years, see how many kilometers of road you can build. You know.
Wow.
All right, so moving beyond, beyond the nitty-gritties of the economy, I think another important aspect that we need to talk about is the debt portfolio.
Yep.
How high is that?
I've stopped tracking the number. I know, it seems as a share of GDP, it's going down a bit. But it's sort of like following the inflation rate of Zimbabwe when they were going through their hyperinflation. At some point, there was no point keeping track of the number. What are the sort of things that add to the debt? It's basically government prioritizing the spending of things they don't need. Like, we know the Ministry of Interior's budget is low to begin with. It's less than the military budget.
Yeah.
But how many millions did the government spent on the tankers. For spraying those cars are very expensive by the way.
Have to be.
I think it's somewhere around almost $10 million on those two. It cannot be less than that. I don't know for sure, but it cannot be less than that. So the debt is going up. So the government, the problem with the debt is a lot more complicated. Some of it is not direct government borrowing. So a lot of it is government basically guaranteeing the borrowing of the state-owned enterprises, like loans taken by Gamtel, Gamcel, NAWEC. There are a lot of these. Unfortunately, these are borrowed from commercial sources. So there is no hope of these things being written off. You know, they are not loans taken from World Bank or from bilateral donors. So debt forgiveness at some point, good luck. So the government, if they've been advised by this, by the way, any loan they are going to take right now needs to have a huge grant component, and so this Saudi Arabia, which we mentioned, this loan from Saudi Arabia, is not as bad as it looked.
Okay.
Yes. What is bad about it is our Ministry of Finance has just done a terrible job, as they have always done, in terms of communicating with the Gambian people. Somebody maybe should give these people a communication lesson. You see, it's a concept based on what I've heard. If that is correct, what I've understood is that it has the loan has a maturity of a couple of decades, about 40 or 50 years.
And all of it is not even loan.
Yes,
some is
that's a grace period of 5 years, and the interest rate is only about 1%. Now compare that to concessional lending of the World Bank. Normally, the World Bank right now, their concessional lending can go from anywhere from 25 to 50 years. The interest rate for a country like the Gambia would be around maybe 4%. A grace period can go up to about 10%. So if you compare the terms between what I've heard about this OIC loan to a World Bank concessional, they are very comparable. So a 1% interest rate is actually it's not something that should add to our debt problem. It's something, I mean, given our growth rate in our economy's growth rate, this is something we can afford. And given and there's also a huge grant component, I believe at least 30% is grant. So something like that, this is something that, I mean, as long as the money is invested well in infrastructure, if it is not diverted towards some recurrent expenditures, this is a very important caveat. Understand that money is fungible. If you are loaning money to an entity that has other expenditures, and the money might, they have other things they can put the money into. We have to be very careful. Just because they say it's going into item A doesn't mean it's going there. Money is very fungible. So on the condition that the money that is being borrowed on this from this IOC program or from Saudi Arabia is going into infrastructure, for such a long-term maturity and such a low interest rate and such an extended grace period, it's actually a good deal.
It's a good deal.
Yes. I don't think it's bad. Though I don't know why it should be very hard for the Ministry
to be able to
explain this to the people, go through due process, explain it very clearly to the National Assembly members. So, but then again, I have not seen the term sheets. I have not spoken to anyone at the Ministry of Finance. So I am just sort of repeating some of the basic information I have. So conditional on this, the details that I've just provided, then this is not
a bad deal.
Yeah.
So we'll take our first commercial break. When we come back, we'll look at some other deals like the oil deal. And of course, we'll also look at the current situation, some political activities, how it affects the economy. Because all these things really affect the economy. It's about stability. So we'll take our first commercial break. When we come back, we'll look at all of that.
Coming up on Kerr Fatou.
So there are two problems. One is information. The other issues is about the quality of the deal. Are we getting the best deal that we can, the best value for money?
Yeah.
Sam pap deena déedéet daf ma yónni woon ma jouer ko bii bi waaw yàlla def mu gagné jàppoon $100,000 la gagné
la ilaha illallah
te yow xam nga ne sama papa dafa amee cardiaque
yow da ngaa dof yow xam nga luy $100,000
am naa ko kay man naa dañoo bëggoon nga dimbali ci
demal na nga def damaa toog rek sama xel mi ne ci yow xam nga barki démb li daal si benn waay fee ma romb ko rek barki démb muy yuuxu di tëb ma ni kii lu ko dal ñu ne ma daal ci loto gaming Gambie bi la laal
jar na ko
laal na ci lu di waaw
nga dafa am quarté am kente am tiercé waaw maanaam nag tey jii kente bi la te jackpot bee passé xaalis
kente mooy lan
kente maanaam mooy juróomi fas yi
waaw beneen bi
am na quarté mooy ñeenti fas yi ak tiercé tey nag xaalis bi daa gën a yokk lu tax ndax jackpot bële dañ kaa tegaat ci bii maanaam juróomi fas yi boo ko jàppee ci ordre mooy risque nga désordre bi sax day fay bu ma ko jàppoon
yooyu moom noonu la demee da ngay dem rek jouer
am na lu ma yaakaar
man gis naa seen kii yi kees yu ndaw yi ci biir dëkk bi mais daal dama ni lii moom amul xaalis da nga ciy def sa xaalis da am
jël wecce rek sànni ko fa xool jëmbat la laa ilaha illallah yow li nga wax ni tey ji bu yàlla dogaloon ma gañe ko lu mu gàtt
fi mu toll nii boo gañe woon $100,000
waaw nu may def
waaw nooy def
xam nga yow sama xarit nga
waaw
damay fexe nga rey say noonu
ci nan
lu mu gàtt $50,000
waay
Thierno woowee l'ambulance
lan la lu xew ni
sa baay gay dee na
sama papa gay lu ko rey
$100,000 dalaa ne ko boo ma gàññaloon si li ma la yónni dama ko koy jox mu daanu ni sama kaw
man waxuma ko mu waxee woon la ko noonu yow la ko waroon informer ndax yow yaa ko gañe yaa gañe jàppoon.
Dreaming of owning a property in a prime location with great proximity and fantastic neighborhood? EJ Investments Sanyang Seaview Estate is the best choice you have been waiting for. Our Sanyang Seaview Estate is approximately 15 minutes drive away from the busy hub of Brusubi roundabout and into the heart of nature, where you can have a peaceful and relaxed lifestyle with your family. You can buy a finished 4-bedroom story with 5-year flexible payment plan or a service plot with 2-year payment plan option. With over 300 homes, you will enjoy big tar roads with covered drainage, modern electrification with solar street lights, gated entrance with security post, and a breath-catching experience of our beautiful sea view and lake view. You can own a home today at our Sanyang Seaview Estate. Call us today on 446-4838 or 325-9220. Visit our website on ejinvestments.net. EJ Investments, first in property.
fay lempo warugal la si képp koo xam ne doomi réew mi nga ak ñu fi dëkk bu fekkee ne ci at mi sa koom-koom weesu na $2,000 mbete weer bu nekk di nga am lu tollu si $2,000. lempo si la nguur gi di sukkandeku ngir liggéey yokkute réew mi. GRA mooy banxaas bu nguuri Gambia sas ngir mu fayeku lépp luy lempo ci biir réew mi ba tax na GRA di yëgal faykati lempo yi ne warugal la pour ñu fay lu ñu naan withholding tax on contract payment maanaam bépp contract bu waay joxe te si biir réew mi la ñu toog kon xaalis si contract bi ngeen nangotoo war nga cee wàññi ci xayma téeméer bu nekk fukka bu fekkee ne contracto bi dëkkut ci biir réew mi bu boobaa di nga war a wàññi téeméer bu nekk fukka ak juróom lii mooy lempo bu ñu naan withholding tax on contract payment. lii mooy lempo bi nga xam ne yow mi joxe contract warugal la nga wëlbatiku dem fay ko ci maakaani GRA tax office bu la gën a jege mbete ci banque yi GRA jagleel pour fay lempo war ngaa jébal lempo bi si diiri fukki fan ak juróom gannaaw bi nga wàññee ci xaalis si contract.
Every young Gambian dreams of a university degree. He wants a good paying job after graduation, a pretty wife, and ultimately own a dream home.
What if I can't afford my desired dream home?
And that is why you need to visit Universal Properties.
We specialize in customer satisfaction. We listen to every of our clients' needs when we show the properties to our client. Before you know it, you hear the client saying,
I like this house.
This is the room that cuts my heart.
And most of the time, they cling to the door, never to let go. Most clients want to close the deal right there. And that is why we always have their contracts in the trunk of our cars. We work at our client's pace. No haggle, no hassle.
We're waiting for you at our office in Caraba Avenue here in the Gambia.
Have you run out of cash power? Do you want to transfer funds to your family? Or do you want salary advance without coming to the bank? Your banking services have just been brought to you on your mobile phone. Download and install from your App Store or Google Play Trust Bank's mobile app. Simply search for TBL mobile app and follow the instructions. You can access the following services: funds transfer, cash power purchase, forex rates enquiries, mobile airtime top-up, mini statement, balance enquiry. TBL app is the only app that allows you to take salary advance and many more. You can also interact with your customers using our USSD code by dialing *533#. At Trust Bank, we bring innovation that is useful to you, our valued customer. With our mobile app and USSD, banking is at your fingertips. Trust Bank Limited, proudly Gambian.
Welcome back to part 2 of this interview. I think part 1 was really, really interesting, Yuma.
Yes.
We're able to look at the economy and, you know, some of the main reasons why some of, you know, the economy is not really picking up.
Yeah.
The budgets, you know, I'm surprised by some of the budget allocations for the departments like the Army and also the Foreign Ministry.
Sure.
But I think it's also important for us to look at the kind of deals the government gets into. For example, I know that when there was this talk of Gambia having oil, at some point the first people that the Gambia dealt with, during Jammeh time there was this, you know, this issue about oil.
Yeah.
And at one point the government had an agreement with another partner, I forgot the name actually. And then now they have also signed another agreement with BP. So the problem we have is we don't have details about these agreements.
Absolutely, and I think this is something the government needs to definitely improve upon. I mean, a lot of these details, sometimes you hear from, like, it's the partners of the government after it has been signed that would release a press, that would, you know, have a press release, and then we try to, you know, follow up from
there, yeah.
You know, by running after them, when they should actually proactively try to, you know, release the details. I mean, this is all part of good governance. This is the way to hold the government accountable. I mean, how can we evaluate these deals if we don't know the details? So it's so this. I mean, it's in a lot of concessions the government side. It turns out that, I mean, these things about the oil deal is probably one of those better ones in terms of, like, the unit actually going out of their way to number one to release information. But even they could do a lot better. I mean, I have spoken to people who work there, and I told them, you know, that currently the information that they are sharing with the public could be really improved upon. So they are doing marginally better than other government sectors. But even the Ministry of Petroleum and Energy has a lot of ways to go. So it doesn't have to take a deal signing between them and BP. Just progress reports on, like, the oil blocks, which ones have been, you know, which oil companies have been given exploration rights for particular, you know, oil blocks. You know, which ones will be coming up at some points, which ones are being renewed. You know, things like these are details that the Gambian people deserve to know. So, in terms of, you know, so there are two problems. One is information. The other issues is about the quality of the deal. Are we getting the best deal that we can, the best value for money?
Yeah.
In many sectors, unfortunately, that's not the case, because, see, we have examples of many deals that, for instance, where there is the EU fisheries deals, some energy deals where, fortunately some of them got struck down, they didn't go. But, you know, some of these details, if you look at how the deals were actually negotiated and signed, you don't even need to know the details, just the process. You can be sure that we didn't get the best value for money. You know, if I want to have an agreement with a multinational and I send only one Gambian national to go and negotiate, even without reading the details, you can tell we will not get a good deal. Yeah.
You know, my impression also is that, before you move on with that, my impression is, if you have a product and you are the one selling,
yes,
you have your product you sell, and the buyers come and you do a bidding process and you choose the best buyer so that you will have the best deal.
Right.
But it happens that for us, we have the product, it's the buyers who come, or one of the buyers who come, present us a deal, and then we see whether or not there is something that we can get from this deal. But most of the cases, it is in the buyer's interest that these deals are being done, right? Yeah. And that is the problematic thing here. With the borough government, this is what has been happening. Nobody knows, for example, how these deals have been negotiated, whether or not they've been put to bid, whether or not many buyers are coming, or many companies like the FAR that was here before,
FAR, yes.
The African Petroleum that was here with Jammeh. How were these deals, how did they even came to be? Who brought these ideas to the government? My impression is that they were brought by the people who were signing the other partners who were signing the deal, and not the government. So therefore, who is benefiting? The Gambian people, the borough government? Is corruption involved in these things or not?
Yeah, there are, a lot of deals have been happening, unfortunately, and this is the problem, because in a lot of these commercial deals between commercial entities and the government, we are not getting a lot of the details. It's difficult to know, so nobody can be blamed for assuming the worst or speculating. The BP deal, that one I know something about it, not a lot of detail, but something. Yeah. And it seems to be one of those things that was done properly. Okay. Where there was a process that was done. They got some assistance from partners, for instance, from the ADB. That helped them fund an outside law firm to advise the government. The process, there was information, the request for proposal. Several oil companies from across the globe, including some of the major ones, sent their proposals. And they went through a process. They shortened the list, and then later at some point in the process selected BP. So there was a process there, and there was a good documentation. And for instance, one of the things that they did in this process was have an intergovernmental panel. So it wasn't only like some small unit within the Ministry of Petroleum, but a team was formed that covered virtually every ministry, including other agencies like even the National Environmental Agency, GAIPA, Finance, all of this. So that team went through the process of going through the proposals, evaluating them. And that was a criteria that was used to evaluate this. And at some point, BP was selected, and
among other options.
Yes, okay. And then it was signed. But again, that being said, the point that both of you are raising is valid. Most people are not aware
of this process.
Because the last time we had was FAR. Yeah. The last time we had about oil in Gambia, it was FAR.
Yeah.
And they said it was unsuccessful.
On a pedestal that there is oil, and all of a sudden there is no oil.
There is no oil, and all of a sudden another deal is signed. Yeah. So this is what people like me who don't know anything.
On what basis, for example, would we have this deal if FAR has established that there was no oil?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And no information.
FAR never,
they didn't discover oil in the areas that they were trying to.
Yeah. So the thing with these things is like there's a lot of details that they can provide. For instance, in offshore, we have several oil blocks, up to like 6 blocks. So when these, right now, the deals we are signing are mainly for exploration. Yeah, and, just to make it quite clear, we are years away from oil production.
Okay.
Yeah. Before you produce oil, you need to right now what we have are some probable reserves. So you need to do some drilling during the exploration phase to actually, have some proven reserves there so that Right now we've done only 1 drilling. Okay. Well, so other countries have to do like over 10 drillings in the different oil blocks before they hit something. So for us, only 1 well has been done, and that one, unfortunately, we didn't hit anything. So there has to be a lot more. But right now, most people can be forgiven for thinking that once we sign something with FAR, we're going to be pumping the following year. But no, this is all at exploration stage. Yeah. The exploitation stage or the production stage.
I think what the government needs to understand is that you are dealing with laymen.
Yes.
Like, we don't have understanding about oil. Myself, regardless of my education, I know very little about the oil sector.
No, this one is not even about education. So, you can be highly educated, but this is very sector specific.
Exactly. So that's
and we have no experience as a country.
They have a responsibility to clearly communicate these nuances with the whole deal, with the whole oil thing, exploration and all of that, all the stages that requires that it requires to reach where everybody is expecting that we're going to reach.
Exactly.
Really.
No, I think it's important so that people can have people know what's happening, people have realistic expectations, and they can hold the relevant government units accountable. You cannot, the public cannot have that accountability role when it is badly misinformed. And the reason why we are having people not knowing much about this is because the Ministry of Petroleum and Energy, though they have very competent people, they are doing some good, they are still not doing a good job of communicating things.
So so when we are able to get any drilling successful, what would that mean for our economy? Having oil in Gambia, what would that mean for the layman, my grandmother at home, not the technocrats, just the ordinary Gambian?
It depends on what we do with the oil. As you can see, just having natural resources is not
It's
a
not
cure.
enough,
Yeah, other countries, they don't
You don't
have.
want to have the Nigeria scenario.
Yes. You can even have the Equatorial Guinea scenario where on paper they have the highest per capita GDP in Africa, in fact higher than some countries in Asia or close to some countries in Europe, but you still have a lot of people in poverty in Equatorial Guinea because the president of that country is playing with the his son has a nice beach house in Malibu. Those goes on weekend parties at Paris, and he's while he's a student, he's also a minister. So that gives you an idea of that country. So the point basically means, there are all sort of possibilities. What it means, it can mean huge amount of development for us, depending on how much our wells are able to produce. It can mean, in fact, bigger corruption, because corruption, when there is a lot more to steal, the government is able to attract greedier men, So right now, maybe some greedy people are like, well, there isn't much to steal in this government. I better try something
I'm glad
else.
you say greedier men because there are no greedy women.
Well,
yes, greedier men.
Perhaps, but the point basically is that you, just as other countries have demonstrated to us, this oil money can benefit us if we spend it well. It can make the country even a cesspool of greed and corruption if we don't have systems in place, if we don't have the right individuals in place to manage it well.
Oh. So before we go, Nima, I also wanted to talk about the health sector. I know we have looked at the agriculture and education and the foreign ministry, their budgets, but it's important because the health is one area that seems to be not doing very well so far, even though the government has said this is a top priority. But still, the health sector is really, you go to the hospitals, there isn't enough beds, there isn't enough medication for people, and generally it's not cheap. So do you think the government needs to put more resources into the health sector, or is it because most of these UN agencies, they bring a lot of money into the health sector, but when they bring in their money, they have capacity building, they have this, the budget supports that they bring in most of the time is specifically for this area. Is it possible for government to come up with a comprehensive plan and say, no, we don't want you to determine for us where we put our money. This is a big budget. This is the basket here. Let's put everything here, and then we will use it as we deem necessary. Is that possible, especially with the UN system and others? Because for them also, when they give you budget support, they'll tell you, oh, capacity building. It can be 10 million. You cannot divert that. When they give you this, they say it's for this. You cannot divert that. And it seems like this is what we're having problems with the health sector.
Well, this actually, what you touch on is actually relevant not only to in fact, to health, but I have actually thought about this issue mainly in other sectors. So you see, you have the ADB, the World Bank, and all the various UN agencies. The thing is, there is no country in the world who was ever developed by the UN or the World Bank or the Asian Development Bank or the African Development Bank or the Inter-American Development Bank or the Islamic Development Bank. No country was ever developed by these agencies. It's countries that develop themselves. Along the way, these people can give you some assistance, and then you can, to supplement, but they are never going to be the agencies that develop. So this is the thing to actually keep in mind, first of all. So if you look at agriculture or education, you will find a lot of projects that are funded by IFAD, FAO, ADB, World Bank. The thing is, though, we should not want our ministries to become project implementation units of these outside agencies.
Yeah.
It is our country's responsibility, our leaders in power, our government, to basically chart a course and say, this is our long-term vision, this is what we're going to do. And based on this long-term vision, they request for assistance that are consistent with that goal, you know, with the targets that they are approaching. Which means it should be our government that, you know, that actually proactively seeks assistance and direct where the funds go. What we have right now is not that. The situation we have right now basically is, you know, in each ministry you go to, especially in health, in education and agriculture, the guy who is the most comfortable is the guy who handles all the projects money. Yeah. So basically, if you are in these offices and there is no project money coming, you are a sad guy. But the guys, when there's a project money, there is a new AC in the office, there's a new pickup.
And they're paid in dollars. I'm sorry to say. These projects are,
and your money is far more than...
people fight over those positions as well within the ministries.
So basically what we have is, you don't have a long-term strategy that they are working towards. Rather, the whole ministries are jumping from one project to another. When this project is implemented and done, it's like, okay, when is the next one coming? When it comes, nobody asks, this project that the World Bank proposes or the project that the ADB proposes, is this consistent with our long-term goal? Is this the kind of project we want, given where we are today and given where we want to be tomorrow? No, it's like, oh, it's coming with money, alhamdulillah, bring it, let's spend it. I need a new desk, I have a new pickup, great. So the issue, so this point is actually is very, very relevant. It's not only health,
but to all departments,
all ministries. It should be, if some project is proposed by FAO or by the UN, and it comes and it's not consistent with our long-term strategies or our sector strategies, it is the government's responsibility to say, no, this project is not good for us. Yes, it comes with money, but what it's going to require is going to take about 10 staff right now and focus them completely on implementing. These 10 staff now means we have 10 less staff in the ministry who can do the long-term and the regular work of the ministry. If everyone is, you know, take Ministry of Agriculture, about a few years back, there was some money from IFAD for NEMA, money from ADB for FASTDEP, money from World Bank for GCAF. Now this is good, they can fund a lot of things, but the way that they are operated, you know, is that it means you have a lot of staff who are taking away from the long-term work of the ministry into implementing these projects. The idea should be the government deciding which project to accept, which to reject. They should be, if the government is not able to say, no, we cannot take this project money right now because it's not consistent with our activities, then the government is not doing its job. It must be able to reject some of them. So this is not, so the larger point is this is true not only for health, but for
all other departments.
Yes. Obviously, whether it could be for capacity building, which we need a lot of. But if you already have, if you bring an unqualified person in a position, you can have 1 million capacity building programs. You cannot turn, I don't know.
I mean, these capacity building programs are turning into money-making programs, especially where people get the opportunity to go outside and study. You have a chance to be given a study leave. You have a chance to be stacking your salary before you come back so that you can build a house and all of that. I don't think majority of the people do not take it seriously as to seeing the importance into what it is going to do to improve their performance in the positions that they are. But I agree with your point so well on the fact that all of these agencies or the donor organizations that are going to give money, they have their independent programs. So if they're going to give money, it's going to be for the extension of those programs. And what we are seeing here is that rather than these people supplementing government's efforts, they are in fact providing jobs for the ministries and other agencies that are working with them. Because if you have a government that do not put its priorities straight, so that when other people come, they are supporting those priorities, you wait for somebody to provide you a project, and that's what you're working on until you're waiting to wait for when the next project is going to come on, then there's a problem. And in the health sector, the government's inactivity in all the sectors can be felt, but it can be felt more so in the health sector also. We're seeing the university graduating doctors, right? But we only have one referral hospital since colonial days. Like we don't have another one. Serekunda is just coming up, but it's still not a referral hospital. It's not a teaching hospital, for example. And I think we need to be able to understand what our health priority is, for example, in the next 5 years, in the next 15 years, what we want to achieve. Rather than having the malaria control projects that is being sponsored by other organizations for our governments to implement. Although it's good, but it doesn't.
We that's great to have. But I remember something that you just mentioned about I remember, I think in the first year, the first Minister of Health said something, if I have not forgotten, said something like, we'll eradicate malaria in 3 years. I think I remember hearing that. And when I heard that, I just laughed because it shows a lack of seriousness. If you're going to, countries have eradicated malaria. If you're going to eradicate malaria, there are actions you'll be taking that we should all see. Just like I have said about security reforms that they are talking about. There has been no security reform in the country because if there were security reforms in the country, we would have seen the effect by now. You cannot see something that doesn't exist unless if you imagine it. So in terms of basically these health programs, examples that you've given are good examples. We could still have malaria eradication would be a great thing, though Gambia cannot eradicate malaria.
I'm not saying it's not the malaria control itself that I'm attacking. My point is that this is another organization's project that you are implementing. So the priorities may not align with your priorities as a government. Another example I can give you is the HIV and AIDS control program that used to exist here. The only donor for that program used to be Global, I think it's called Global Aid.
Global Alliance or something.
When Jammeh was here, at some point that program was stopped. And now no funding is coming up. And the government is not doing its job to continue the program. Now, each time the statistics come out as to the number of people who are being infected by HIV and AIDS, it increases tenfold. Outrageous numbers are coming out about HIV and AIDS. And what is the government's priority in that regard, for example?
Let's look at even the basic things. Women giving birth and, dying whilst giving birth. That is in developed worlds, nobody should die giving birth. And this is what is very common in our country. That is the simplest things that we cannot even manage right now.
And the sad thing about that is when projects were active, child mortality rates, maternity mortality rates were going down.
They were going down.
But when projects cease, they start to pick up again. That means somebody is doing the job, the government is not.
So basically they don't, in other words, they're just following the projects instead of having their long-term objective and just having these projects coming in to supplement them. I mean, basically, I mean, so you can have a long-term health strategy. Within that health strategy, you can have, our key health issues. Infant mortality, maternal mortality, morbidity, infectious diseases, respiratory diseases, all sort of things. I mean, the key things that affect. And you can have prevention programs like vaccinations. But so you can have these long-term programs. As you get funding, whether they come from WHO or other bilateral donors, you are able to direct them where they are needed. Government is able to allocate the little it can from its central budget. If a certain program ends, maybe you can experience some dip in resources and maybe it can be reflected in some indicators, but you don't see these drastic upswings in indicators, mortality and morbidity, as you're mentioning, when a project ends, which is just basically telling you any activity in that particular area has ceased just because the funding from outside has gone. Because the government basically didn't have its own, plan. I mean, one thing people should realize is, don't think of this UN, World Bank, ADB as some super places with super people. I and many Gambians have worked there. They are just like you and I. They are responding to some bosses there. They have performance indicators to meet. They are just like any regular individuals. Some of them, they are evaluated based on the projects that get approved. So if you are a staff member sitting in FAO, you are able to get a project in Gambia. First thing you will, the last thing, many of them, you see, when you look at our NDP, it covers every sector. It's easy to say that any project that you can come up with at the FAO or the UN is consistent with our NDP. All they have to do is, they check, they say, I'm sure if I bring this, project to Gambia, they will take it because the government officials are just looking for money. It's not because, I'm not trying to be too cynical, but most of the time, some of these projects that come, it is the result of one individual sitting in an office saying that, I need a project approved for my own performance indicator for this year. I'm going to have it approved, and if it gets approved, great for me. How that project performs 10 years down the road, they don't care. It's another staff member who looks at the monitoring of that project, not the one who approves it. So we as a country, that's why this organization cannot develop a country. The responsibility is the country itself. You need to have your own long-term strategy.
Yeah, and it's important to make clear that regardless of who is sitting over there to design a project and have it approved, to raise their performance indicator, if those projects are serving good objective in the country, it should be accepted.
Exactly.
But it should not be replaced. It should not be what replaces our national priorities.
Yes. I think that's the own long-term programs.
Yeah. There should be supplementary efforts. They're not supposed to be the priorities of the state.
Exactly. That's the reality right now, unfortunately.
True. And that's the reality. Yeah. Unfortunately, we are running out of time. But I would definitely, for me, I want your reaction to, general assessment of this government, 3 years almost. And of course, recently we have the Justice Minister just mentioned, announced that they're going to release the junglers that have been cooperative with the TRRC. And they're going to be released. There's brought a lot of reaction in the community, and of course also the different political tensions happening, how good it is for the economy. Is it helpful, especially for our development partners? All of these, I want us to rush through that quickly. Yeah. I don't know how we can do that, but these are interesting important things that we really need to look at, because all of these things have bearings on the economy, though.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's important.
Everything is interlinked.
Yeah.
No, I think the news that the junglers will be released, well, I didn't see the press conference that happened today. Yeah. So, assuming that they are being released because of some due process concern that needs to be followed, and then later on justice can be pursued, I have no problem with that.
That is it, yeah.
But if it is the issue that these junglers will be released because the government feels that they don't have the capacity to deal with them, which the minister has announced at some point, I think this is a huge failure on their part. Because I think this would be a specific case of a general bad performance of this government. If I have to give them a grade, 3 years up to now, I would say a grade of F. Yes.
F.
Yes. F based, there's just no way I can look at in any sector where I can say I am confident in what they have done, whether they've done the right thing. Let's take the Ministry of Justice.
Justice, yeah.
Yes.
We have the CRC. We have the the other one. The TRRC is on.
Yeah.
Barrow will tell you the agenda was to have to work on the reforms. That was the agenda for this transitional government.
Name me the reforms that have taken place.
Okay, the CRC is ongoing.
Not a reform, by the way.
But they're trying to change the constitution. That is the major thing that because we said the reason why we are in this big blunder is because we don't have a good constitution.
But the point is, are those things inevitable? Is that something that you can ignore, for example?
Yeah. To me, if you have given me the job of forming a new constitution, I would just go to that constitutional commission that had been put in place in 1996, I believe, and that had taken a good set of recommendations to Jammeh, and he took out all of the good things and made and left us with the 97 one, which is a constitution good for a dictatorship.
Yeah.
So I would acknowledge CRC being there is a good thing.
The Financial Commission, the Janneh Commission, and the TRRC.
Yes.
But
again, these are all processes, no reforms here.
No reforms.
The Jana Commission has made a set of recommendations.
But the security sector reform is undergoing, according to the government. They have started it.
According to the government.
Yeah.
But as I have written many times before, and as the EU representative himself has said, he made an announcement a few days ago, no one has seen any evidence of it. We all live in the Gambia.
Yeah.
We drive every day.
Yeah.
Do you see any evidence?
There has been a series of meetings and meetings and
basically meetings and talking shops,
yeah.
consultative workshops, meaningless tours of the country, but not a single effect. You know, we should right now. We want to go beyond just talking. We want to see results. We don't see any results in terms of the security sector reform. That is zero. The way the SNIA was behaving before, if you remove the killings,
change of name,
and nothing has changed. You just change the head and put a different head there. Nothing has changed in their operations. I got stopped at the Barra crossing by some SIS agents who wanted to search my bags, and I asked for a reason. They told me, well, we are SIS. We can search your bag for, you know, for drugs. We can search your bags. Maybe you are bringing goods from Senegal that you pay custom duties for. This is basically the behavior of the NIA that gave itself mandate to do everything. We have the customs, we have immigration, we have the police, we have drug enforcement. Why would the SIS be based at the Barra Ferry crossing, putting people in rooms and searching their bags? There's no change in the actual day-to-day operations. The security reform, they are only talking. There hasn't been any change in the ground. The military is still having checkpoints. We had somebody got shot at the at Kanilai. I had a gun pointed at me at the Kalaji crossing. People are getting stopped and their vehicles are getting searched by the military checkpoints in Farafenye, in Kalaji, along the way every single day. You know, has the behavior of the police changed in the way that they operate here? They are still getting bribed. They are still, if you go to the police stations, what you go through right now is what you would have gone through on the Jammeh's era. If you look at every branch of the security sector, nothing has changed fundamentally. They have done nothing but talk and talk. This is why I would give the Barrow government a grade of F, because this is just one sector. I could go into other sectors and list the same factors. So the Ministry of Justice, going back to the other point, is that the fact that our Minister of Justice would go before the country 3 years after being in power, saying that they do not have the capacity to prosecute the junglers who, you know, have confessed, other people, victims and co-collaborators, you know, provided corroborating evidence. In any country where you have a minimum amount of capacity, this shouldn't be a difficult case to prosecute.
I think he said it was more of a moral, no, it was more of they have been in detention for 2 years. And then
that's where I find him to contradict himself. First of all, it is not just 3 people who have been named as junglers and have been incarcerated for more than 2 years. But it is 3 people only who they are planning to release at this point. And when he comes out and say we are doing that to respect due process, the question now remains, what happens to the others? Why should they remain in custody if due process is what is under discussion right now? But I can also understand his perspective in allowing for these people to come out to wait for the TRRC recommendation. Because these are the 3 individuals who have voluntarily come on the TRRC and were willing to provide information to help the TRRC process. And we have to understand that the TRRC process was established to get the truth. To get the truth out, but also to meet certain objectives. And regardless of the TRRC, we're always going to have the legal process to prosecute individuals. But if you want to aid the TRRC process, that's something that you want to loosen the rope on a little bit for now, until after their recommendations come out. And also, when he speaks about capacity, we know that you can always accuse somebody of committing something. They can come out and say, I did it. They can come back again and say, I said I did it, but I don't do it. I don't know how the law works on that. But that all of that can happen. You want to have evidence that is not circumstantial, evidence that cannot be permissible in court. Now, if you have 3 individuals who have participated in these killings, who have confessed to have participated in these killings, and they could be willing to to serve as witnesses against people that bear the greater responsibility in those killings, I think that's a deal that would favor the state in event of any trial. To give them an incentive, because if you're cutting a deal, you're getting something out of it.
We have information that's the deal they're making.
It seems like there is a deal. It seems like there is a deal.
All of these,
that's how it looks
these things
like.
are possibilities. They hinted at these things, that these people could serve as witnesses in future trials against people that bear the greatest responsibility.
That was his exact words. People that bear the greater responsibility.
And
That
these are acceptable in legal proceedings if you are sought on evidence to guarantee you a conviction against the people who have been accused of human rights violations or any other violations for that matter. You cut a deal with people with lesser responsibility so that you can get the bigger fish, right?
Yeah.
So this is acceptable.
So but people will also argue, how somebody who participated in 48 killings be a lesser...
But how would you compare that to somebody who gives the command?
I mean, I mean, I know, I understand, but
we're speaking in terms of comparison. Nobody is going to lessen the atrocities that these people have confessed to. But if you compare it, for example, somebody who gives the command, somebody who has all the state apparatus at their disposal, and they can make life and take life. I don't know. That's an exaggeration, but. Jammeh was that powerful, right? If you compare that, you may be in a position to deal with this person going scot-free than allowing Jammeh to go scot-free, right? Why? Because if you don't have evidence against Jammeh, how are you going to prosecute him? How are you going to convict him?
Well,
wouldn't that be a loss?
This is all based on the assumption that our Ministry of Justice would go after Jammeh.
But Barr said, I can assure the victims that this is in the long-term interest. This is in their long-term interest. And in the long-term interest of the victims.
Thing we need to, again, we need, when we speak about prosecutions and legal proceedings, we need not to lose sight of the TRRC. Here, we want to also aid the TRRC process, right? 2 junglers appear today, and they appear to be very difficult. They were not forthcoming with information. They refuse sometimes to answer to the questions that were put to them. You have 3 people who did the opposite. And I think it was a great thing for us to hear the details of how these things happen. And I think it may go a long way to provide closure for some other victims.
Would you believe the
right?
timing is the timing
I think the
of
timing
releasing these people?
The timing will never be right.
For me,
releasing
is the timing.
Will never be the best decision. It's always going to be controversial. It's always going to be difficult. Not everybody is going to agree with the decision, but we can understand from where they are coming from. Let's say, for example, these 3 people were willing to give this valuable information. And they remain in incarceration with others who refuse to give the answers. What is their incentive? What is the incentive for other people who could be brought to give?
Well, there is all sort of, you can have incentives. I mean, the thing is, whatever time they are going to spend right now, in assuming, let's say they are in detention, whatever time they are going to spend in detention until trial is minuscule compared to if being sentenced to life imprisonment or death. So there's a lot of incentive later on. I mean, I agree with us. I mean, the points you are making, there are all sort of reasons why you would want to release these people now. Releasing them now doesn't mean absolving them. They could be tried later.
People are out there saying they are granting them amnesty. This is not amnesty at all.
Well,
because amnesty could only be determined by TRRC, not the Justice Minister at this point.
Well, the President can give, is given that, has that power to amnesty them. But what I'm
amnesty after trial, not before. Not amnesty, in fact. That would be a pardon.
A pardon.
But that is after somebody has been convicted not before trial.
Okay. So the point I'm trying to make, though, if people are confused about these people being, the releasing, people are confusing that with some amnesty. That would, that's something because both a member of TRRC and I think the Ministry of Justice say some of them could.
Yes, they granted amnesty.
Could be granted. So you can at least, you can forgive the layman for maybe confusing their releasing today.
Exactly.
So to the extent that, releasing them today doesn't absolve them of holding them accountable at some point in the future, I'm fine with that. If this is done in the process of due process, it's important to follow due process in a period like this. We don't want to start abusing people's rights just because they are unpopular. The law should apply to anyone, whether
regardless
or
of
not.
the nature of their crime.
Exactly, or their level of popularity. So that being said, I have a general concern about the TRC itself. It's like, if there is a possibility even one murderer can be amnestied, I think that's a problem. Because I mean, the victims here are not here to absolve anybody. Those ones who lost their lives, they paid the highest price, which is the right to life. So if you go and apologize to their relatives, fine. Their relatives can forgive, but that is as far as it goes. You know, what can you do to mitigate the loss of life to an individual? You know, to me, maybe what you could have some sort of, these are criminal cases to me. You could have some sort of situation where their cooperation with prosecution or with investigators they are given, that is used as a mitigating factor when it comes to sentencing, as opposed to life imprisonment that are given 25 years versus somebody who is given no finite time because they didn't cooperate. That I can understand. But an amnesty for anyone who has participated in any of these, I just don't see it as giving the right lessons. Because, I mean, we talk about never again. What would be...
Another thing that is missing, all of this point, is what would amnesty mean? Because I don't think that is clearly spelled. Is it a blanket amnesty? Is it going to be a reduced sentence? Is it going to mean some other forms of amnesty?
Well, no. If it's a reduced sentence, it's not an amnesty, because that happens every day in criminal proceedings across the world. You can have the same two people being accused of a crime. One is both of them killed, but one of them gets a reduced sentence because they cooperated with the prosecution. The other not having, without any amnesty being involved. Both of them still, I mean, spending 25 years, if you are a 40-year-old, spending 25 years in prison is almost like a life sentence. It's still better than spending, you know, the whole lifetime there. So a reduced sentence is not an amnesty. You can take that as a mitigating factor to lessen their sentence. So when I hear amnesty, I'm talking about somebody basically
walking out free.
And that not a reduced sentence. And that, to me, you can't, this never again makes, is an empty phrase, because if people can commit such heinous crimes and murders and then go free just because they appear in front of a commission and confess and ask for forgiveness, that to me is not providing the right set of consequences to people that would ensure that tomorrow another set of people wouldn't commit the crime.
Wow. But I saw on Facebook today that somebody screenshotted a part of the TRRC Act where it has been stated that people who have committed crimes against humanity cannot be given amnesty. And this is something you would consider that.
Good. So is ESA... when SRFAL says some of these junglers might qualify for amnesty. Is he talking about there are some people who are called junglers but who didn't commit any crimes like that?
Because that's what he said last week. So that is a very serious... I mean, for the lead counsel even to say that, though, that was very concerning.
That's preemptive at this point.
That was concerning.
Those are utterances that they should be careful about. Because that's also where people's understanding about releasing these three junglers at this point would mean that they are going to be granted amnesty.
And what the likes of Sana Sabali, would he be tried? Because he actually, gave command and participated in execution of somebody. So I understand some people were, have some, feelings of sympathy towards him, given the suffering he himself. But to me, that still doesn't.
I mean, we can still forgive, but the law doesn't forgive, does it?
In fact, in a criminal, the issue of forgiveness is not in a criminal case, because that, especially that's involved the killing of somebody. You can. Like I said, those sort of feelings of forgiveness, those are mitigating factors that maybe in the sentencing you can reduce it a bit. But forgiveness has no role in a criminal case.
Wow. This is an interesting conversation, but time is, I mean, he was not able to react to the political thing. The tensions going on. Yeah. How will it affect the economy?
The tensions, you mean, I mean...
You know, the Barrow, you know, people thinking Barrow is going to...
3 years job now.
No. The 3 years, especially the protest coming. I understand. It's in December, and December is where our tourist season, how will this affect the tourist season, and, you know, all of that, and that is what our economy is depending on.
Yes. Anything that, anything that causes an unrest is not good for the economy. Okay. If an investor is planning to come in, and he sees all sort of strikes and demonstrations in the country, obviously he or she will think twice before coming. So it's not good. But again, there are proximate and ultimate causes for this. Mm-hmm. You could say, oh, the 3 years Jordan people should stay at home, shouldn't come out because it will lead to unrest. Yeah. But if our argument is that any activity that leads to a slight bit of unrest should be stopped, well, no change, even in places where change is required, would happen. Yeah. In this particular case, the people in the 3 years Jordan do have a strong case for going outside and protesting, because it's a way of going and holding the government to its word. The government of Anambra gave its word. Now it's desiring to go back on its word.
But doctor, you know, our constitution says the president should rule for 5 years. Yeah. And this was an agreement.
I always argue this.
Yeah,
the constitution clearly states the term of a government for a particular period of time. The people give their leaders the mandate to rule over them. Yeah. The mandate was based on the fact that Adama Barrow came to the people and said, vote for me, and I'm going to serve you for 3 years and I will resign. Yes. When you vote for him on that basis, that is the mandate. His mandate is for 3 years.
The constitution doesn't say that you must serve for 5 years. Nothing prevents you from serving less. Any president can resign. Any president can leave before the end of the term. The constitution,
any president can be asked to resign.
The constitution just says that, puts that limit. It doesn't say you must, once you start from day one, you must serve the full 5 years. The constitution doesn't say that. And he himself knows that. And the argument that they are using is completely disingenuous. So the people, the 3 year Jotna movement, or any protest that comes out in December against the Barrow government for failing to keep its word is justified.
It's justified.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Nyuma. Thank you very much, Doctor. I think this is a very, very interesting conversation, and Gambian people will learn a lot from this, especially the government. I think these are the kind of frank conversations
we need to have.
Yeah, we need to have.
At the end of the day, it's this country that we have.
Yeah,
exactly.
So we can always agree and disagree, but our common interests remain.
Our common interest remains.
Obviously.
Sophie meew la bu sell te neex baax na ci halal ak mag yépp am na calcium iron protein ak vitamine yu bari. Sophie full cream powder milk la am na 20 gram 200 gram ak 400 gram ku ko ñam dootu ko bàyyi. Sophie, proudly Gambian.
Better and stronger as the sole ground operator at the Banjul International Airport. With an expansion in travel services, customers are assured of GIA's capacity to cater for all their travel needs, provided by professional, experienced, and ever-smiling staff. GIA's Hajj package and services, by far the best in the country, give the customers the opportunity for a memorable Hajj experience. For a more efficient cargo services, GIA means business as it launches its new multi-million-dollar ultra-modern cargo complex to revitalize and stimulate air transport. GIA, the pride of the Gambia.
Doctor, your final message?
Well,
Hopefully this is not
to
going to be
President Barrow. To President Barrow.
Well, I don't know if President Barrow is listening.
I'm sure he's watching. He watches Kerr Fatou though.
This one?
Yes.
This one, yeah. No, my message basically is this transition government was voted in for a specific term for a transitional regime.
Yeah.
And a transitional regime has a certain set of responsibilities, which means you need to do a certain set of reforms. We are not seeing any of those reforms. And most importantly, for you to have the respect that you should expect in a position that you are holding, you need to keep to your word. And your word is 3 years. And when that 3 years comes, you would step down and you need to keep to that word.
I am team 5 years though. My final message. I think President Barrow should serve for 5 years.
I think he should serve for 3 years. I am more concerned about what is happening with our environment, the Chinese investments that is happening here, how that is destroying our environment, especially the coastal areas, and why is our government mute on all of these things that are happening. I am concerned about having a leader who, in terms of emergencies, in terms of situations where people are concerned, and you would expect a leader to come out as a symbol of reconciliation, as a symbol of hope, you would never see him coming out to speak to the people. I am also concerned about a leader who is more concerned about perpetuating himself in a position where a simple show of, I don't know, concern for your people could earn you that position. Instead, you are doing other ultra unnecessary stuff to keep yourself there. A simple truthfulness, a simple, how am I going to say this, keeping to your word. I'm going to serve for 3 years. You serve for 3 years, come back, you may get voted into the office. It's that simple. But if people do not have trust in you anymore, and people cannot rely on you for anything, and you keep breaking your promise to the people, obviously, regardless of what you do, your chances of being re-elected is very slim. And that's the message I have for the president.
Thank you very much, Nima. Thank you very much, Doctor. Good night to you all. See you next week. I have no message.